I am Wella Tan. I'll be your host in this breakout session. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch at home. Now, let's get back to business and get started with today's session. I'm sure you're all looking forward to the presentations of our guest speakers. The things they will be sharing with us today will certainly come in handy as you create your strategies in strengthening the cybersecurity of your respective organizations. So let's get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker is the field CTO of Palo Alto Networks. He is responsible for engaging CISOs and the broader security community on emerging cybersecurity topics such as cloud security and SASE. Prior to Palo Alto Networks, he has had successful stints at Gartner and Akamai, and these roles have all helped build in him a deep appreciation towards and gratitude for the cybersecurity community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the field CTO of Palo Alto Networks, Mr. Siddharth Deshpande.
And welcome. My name is Sid Deshpande. I'm Field CTO at Palo Alto Networks based in Singapore. And I'm really happy to be back here at the ISOG forum. I've presented here and engaged with a lot of you several times in different roles in my career. And I'm always amazed at the level of energy and excitement and the great questions that keep coming back and forth throughout these events. So I'm really looking forward to discussing a very exciting topic with you today, something that we've all been talking about in the cybersecurity industry for many years, which is it really possible to improve security posture and your user experience at the same time? This has been a perennial debate. Sometimes it's a philosophical debate, sometimes it's a theoretical debate, but we actually have something practical to show you today. So let me get straight into it, and give me a second while I just open up my slides. Okay, 1 second. All right. So we're going to talk about how we can combine zero trust network access with a great user experience. And we all know that over the last few years, there you go, over the last few years and specifically over the last 18 months, the world has changed. And this digital transformation was kind of forced upon us by the pandemic. But now, as we start looking at an endemic COVID-19 situation, we're looking at a future of the hybrid workforce, right? Where sometimes people might be in the office, sometimes they may be at home. Different countries might have different levels of reopening. So you still need to, as an IT and security department, you still need to make sure that you're offering a consistent user experience and a security posture as well. And in the hybrid work environment, there's some challenges like services that might be exposed because you might have services in your data centers and clouds that attackers might be able to access. As you go digital, you put more stuff in the cloud versus putting it in your data center. You might have a situation where there are inconsistent security policies deployed depending on where the users are. So a user perhaps operating out of his or her home or a coffee shop might actually have more restrictive security policies than if they were in the office. But we definitely can't have that as a prolonged situation. And then again, talking about remote access, you might have situations where the working environment might change overnight if there's a situation like a lockdown. So your employees that might have been working in the office might all of a sudden need to overnight work remotely. So that peak and that scalability needs to be handled by whatever approach you're taking for your B2B security. And then from a technology stack standpoint, there's a lot of complexity today in the enterprise environment. Organizations have different types of networks for connecting their branch offices and different ways to go direct to the internet. They're using things like MPLS and traditional WAN architectures. They're also using different types of security capabilities like secure web gateways, CASBs, firewalls. So it's kind of all over the place. And if you're talking about an environment where you have to offer a consistent security posture and a consistent user experience, it becomes a little difficult to manage all of this. And of course, when you're looking at work from home specifically, you have a noisy and unplanned Wi-Fi environments. You have a situation where you're dealing with consumer grade ISPs, and there's a lot of shadow IT happening where employees are wanting to use collaboration tools, sometimes sanctioned, sometimes unsanctioned. There's bandwidth challenges with the home Wi-Fi being used for many other things apart from work as well. So these challenges are now persistent and they're going to continue for the foreseeable future. So zero trust network access is a way of actually taking away the location from the equation. So the whole principle behind zero trust network access, or ZTNA, this is a term that is coined by Gartner a few years ago. It is basically to change the access model from a location based to an identity based access model. So the idea from a design principle standpoint is that it shouldn't matter where your application is delivered from, and it shouldn't matter where your user is, whether they're in the corporate network or they're outside roaming or at home. They should get the same level of access control, the same security policies, and the infrastructure should be able to scale in order to deliver that, depending on the vagaries of the current social environment and lockdowns and work from home and so on. So that's the promise of ZTNA. Uh, and that kind of helps to overcome the challenges of the traditional remote access environment where companies would actually backhaul their traffic to their corporate data center, pass it through a VPN appliance, and then send it back out after inspection. So that really doesn't work when a majority of your users and your applications are no longer in your corporate environment or data center. But not all ZTNA is created equal. Uh, Typically, what you find out there when it comes to zero trust network access is a software-defined perimeter approach, and there are different terms for it, right? What this basically does is that it's a proxy-based approach, which puts in place some sort of a reverse proxy in between the user and the application. And that proxy is used to then implement an access control uh, mechanism. And that access control mechanism could be, it's based on integrations with the corporate identity store, but it typically also takes into account a little bit of context about the user, and maybe you have some multi-factor authentication put in. The whole idea is to identify whether uh, the user is actually the user or not, A, and whether the access credentials that are presented by the user, whether those are valid or not. But what happens is once that access has been granted, it's an encrypted tunnel between the user and the application. So the security team is actually blind. You don't have any way to inspect this traffic for data security related policies, or to be able to inspect it to detect for malware and so on. So typically, if an attacker is able to get access to it, then they're typically able to do a lot of things with the application. Maybe it's an insider threat, maybe it's a malicious actor. They're able to exfiltrate a lot of data and so on. So a more wholesome approach towards zero trust network access is to kind of take a firewall based approach where you're not really doing everything through a proxy, but you're taking an approach where you're able to inspect the traffic for threats, for data loss, and you're able to integrate user authentication and access control into that as well. So anyway, that's the design philosophy that Palo Alto Networks follows, and that has proven to be quite beneficial to organizations, because one of the things that Gartner talks about, And ZTNA is a Gartner term, Zero Trust Network Access, as is Secure Access Service Edge. One of the things that Gartner talks about is to be able to inspect traffic inline for threats. Now, if you're doing a ZTNA in a way that you cannot inspect it for threats, then that becomes a problem because you're leaving a lot of threat scenarios unaddressed. And it's not just about access. It's not just about one-time access. It's also about a continuous threat assessment at the level of the device, of the user, and the application. And that's when the whole story of zero trust really comes together. When all of these different pieces of the workflow, when a user accesses the application, all these different pieces can actually share context and do continuous threat assessment. And what I was talking about earlier, the single pass security scanning, that has been called out as a very important criteria for these types of projects by Gartner. And it's about looking at user ID, who is the user, what is the authentication status, what is the device posture, some context about the application, what kind of information is being requested, what kind of access, and so on. And then more importantly, or not more importantly, but equally and very importantly, is being able to look at the content, actually inspect the content, which includes private traffic, includes all ports and protocols. You need to be able to inspect not just HTTP, HTTPS traffic, but also traffic like JSON RPCs, SMB traffic, UDP traffic, and even DNS for that matter. So all of these things are very important because as a security team, you want to be able to cover the entire spectrum of protocols and use cases. And again, it's also about integrating with your centralized identity store. So at the access control portion of the workflow, it's important to integrate with the identity management or identity federation capability that you're using in the enterprise. And we do that typically with the SAML protocol. And we're able to integrate that and perform the MFA as part of the access flow. But it's not just about identity, right? Because identity stores and the information in them doesn't really change typically drastically over the life cycle of a user. But user behavior might change. Like an attacker might be able to get access to a user's credentials by phishing them, and they might be abused and might install risky applications, etc. Or maybe John is just a malicious actor who might want to steal some data. So these behavioral aspects of remote access or hybrid access don't really get addressed just by integrating with the identity store, because that's a bit of a static concept. So it's important to be able to have dynamic policy enforcement, which you can do as part of the zero trust network access stack by actually implementing what we call dynamic user groups, but you can call it anything else that's convenient. But the idea is that while you can't change the identity store always, or it might take time to investigate at the identity store level, at the firewall as a service level, or at the zero trust network access level, you should be able to put in place a user group that says, okay, I'm detecting that this user is behaving in a suspicious manner. Therefore, I want to put in place a behavioral rule to make sure that they're not able to perhaps cause any damage, or I want to make their access read only, or I want to enforce multi-factor authentication or some kind of security policy. So that's again the idea of defense in depth. But then user experience is super important as well, right? Because across the board, employees say that they want to have a better user experience with their workplace platforms, and that has a great impact on their uh, satisfaction, on their productivity, and so on. But there are challenges because network managers and security teams, while they want to enable the employees' desire to work remotely for an extended period of time, they also report that on a daily basis, there's lots of challenges associated with accessing the home connections and so on. So um, in our region, in Asia Pacific and in Southeast Asia and in the Philippines as well, um, internet connections can be erratic, right? In the metros, you might have really good connectivity, but you might have slightly variable connectivity in other parts, right? So the workforce is still going to be distributed. So the security policy and the user experience needs to be consistent anyway. So what we're talking about when it comes to secure access service edge, and for those of you that may not have heard about it, secure access service edge or SASE is a framework that Gartner has come out with, and it's kind of an architectural advisory to companies on how they can architect their security and connectivity stacks to support this hybrid workforce. And essentially what they've said is that you take a network as a service layer, like a connectivity layer, like an SD-WAN. Gartner recommends SD-WAN, and you layered on top of that, or you integrate that with a security as a service layer, typically with services like firewall as a service, CASB, ZTNA, Cloud Switch, etc. And you deliver these together so that you're able to deliver security policy enforcement closer to wherever the users are, whichever part of the Philippines they might be in, or whether they're at home or in the office or so on. So this is the vision. Now, what we've actually done is we first of all, the Palo Alto Network's Prisma Access design philosophy is pretty aligned with that, and we have a full SD-WAN capability that's integrated into security as a service. But we've also introduced something called autonomous digital experience management, which is the user experience part of it. So far we've spoken about security. Now let's talk about how that integrates with the user experience. So autonomous digital experience management, or just digital experience management, DEM, is a concept that has been written about by the analyst community. And the whole idea is that IT administrators and security teams should be able to monitor tangibly what the user experience is for their employees and partners, and be able to get insights into that in real time and make modifications to their access and security policies in real time while those requests are kind of coming in, and also be able to intelligently remediate and perhaps offer alternate connectivity options in case problems are detected. So the vision is that you do this for all users and all branch offices. And this is integrated with the secure access service edge stack, which makes a lot of sense, because that's the kind of outcome that we are all trying to get to. So for a mobile user, the way it works is that in our case, the way it works is that the client or the agent that's sitting on the user's device, that actually it's already there to enable the SASE architecture, to enable steering of traffic towards the Prisma Access cloud. And that same client actually collects a lot of information about the user's device, about their operating system and so on, but also about the Wi-Fi network that they're on. So imagine that it's a senior executive who's decided to go out to their garden to take a call, and they seem to be getting good Wi-Fi, but they're having connectivity issues. They call the help desk, and the help desk is able to actually figure out that, look, this is why this is happening, because there's a bit of patchy connectivity. So you might want to do this, or you might want to make some changes, or we can help make some changes for you as well. And then the other part of that is not just at the end user's device, but also looking at the network itself, looking at the traffic flow from the user's device all the way to the application, which traverses our cloud service, security as a service, our SASE service, but then it also goes across various routes on the internet through public cloud providers or through to the public internet to eventually get to the application. So being able to integrate this digital experience monitoring as a part of that network flow also gives a lot of great insights about where the performance issues might be, and it helps make intelligent routing decisions that help improve the user experience as well. So there's two parts to it. One is the ADEM for mobile users, and the other is remote networks, but ultimately it's part of the same monitoring effort. So just some screenshots. This is a recently released capability, so it's super exciting. So you're actually able to see all of your users, the experience score. You look at which Prisma Access location, which is our security as a service stack, where they're connected, upstream ISPs, bandwidth consumed. So you can actually drill down at a user level. So if you're getting calls from users, specific users, you can get a lot of insight within a couple of clicks um, into their behavior and their application performance and utilization. You can look at it from an application level as well, where you can see the bandwidth utilization by app category. Look at users that are identified as having issues with specific applications and so on. So combining this with the security insights, it becomes quite powerful, not just from a user experience and a security posture perspective, but imagine talking to a regulator about this combined capability. I think regulators would also be super interested in some of these dashboards and some of these compliance reports. And the ultimate objective is to be able to identify problem applications and to solve user challenges. And that's been the mission, or that's been a desire for security professionals forever, right? That if you're able to demonstrate that the security program is actually contributing to business agility and it's contributing to digital transformation and not just saying no all the time, what could be better? So yeah, pretty excited to be talking about these capabilities right now. So that brings me to the end of the slides. Of course, we'll take some questions now, and I'm happy to keep it interactive. But if you want to know more about this combination of user experience and security, or zero trust network access and ADEM, I'm sorry for the acronyms, but as a former analyst, I know how difficult it is to identify categories. So yeah, they're just two acronyms you can think about. But if you want to learn more, please scan this QR code. It will take you to our website where there's a lot of different resources on these topics. You can download white papers and you can explore some demos and stuff as well, hands-on capabilities. And then we have a local team to support you as well. We have Kay in Manila. I'm based in Singapore, but feel free to find us on LinkedIn and connect with us as well. And we're happy to keep the conversation going. All right, with that, thank you. I will stop sharing my slides now and looking forward to taking some questions. Thank you.